foreign exchange and risk. They play a big component as you go through in the process of looking on the dynamics of moving business into a country. Large and growing international debts of middle and low income nations cause problems for the governments and for the multinational firms that take part in the overall economy as you go through. Large foreign debts can hinder access to foreign currency to pay for imports that are built in the foreign country as you go through. So when somebody comes across and they sit there and says, I'm going to sit down there and do $3.5 trillion and it costs $0. Huh? And make certain you say, because of the fact, big picture wise, you're increasing the overall debt to the nation. And even though it may be domestic debt, you're looking overall as to what is the debt load per individual in that country as you go through. And you'll see high debt can cause governments to impose all kinds of things from price controls, government spending cuts, and impose wage controls, sometimes encouraging political crisis. You start sitting down spending a lot of money, inflation kicks up. Once upon a time in our country, we sat down and I recall buying a house, I paid over 17% annually on the mortgage because inflation was out of control. Now we're dealing in the current economy with about 5 to 6% inflation compared to a year ago of less than 3%, which we had for about 15 years as we go through. We really haven't seen some of the hyperinflation that's going on out there over one country right now. They have 400% inflation on food. That means a loaf of bread today, a year from now, will cost you $4. How do you survive on that? Oh, wait, you don't really. A lot of times the population becomes upset to the point of overthrowing the government and putting somebody in the chair that's going to sit down there and not destroy the country through debt issues. That's how big this issue really comes to. A scarcity of foreign trade. If a company comes in and they have hyperinflation, they're not going to sit there and want to stay because they'll be paying the same outrageous fees and changes in the economy, and it becomes so unstable, they end up leaving or working outside the country and selling their goods in to take advantage of the poorness of the people as they go through it in the process. Like, oh my gosh, indebted governments, they impose all kinds of restrictions, conserve the foreign exchange so you can have a repayment of the debt as you go through. Here's a global debate about two different approaches. To assess the development, the focus on the economy, or take a close look at the people and the choices and options open them for healthy lives as you go through. Here's an example of it as you go through. You'll see percentage the debt of the overall of debt as you go through the process. China has a huge number, and by the way, they had so many people developing massive amounts of real estate in the process. Right now, at the time of this recording, there's multiple companies going belly up because they no longer depend on the government to cover their debt and cover their really lack of control over their pricing and their building and the rapid expansion as you go through. This is a big number when it comes down to looking at debt as a percentage of the overall national income. It really plays heavy as you go through and move into a country. You do not want to think about moving into countries that have massive debts per capita as you go through. The total population is a general indicator of the potential market size, and it's also the one we look at first. So size alone is a poor indicator of the strength as you go through. But look at over here, the growth you have. Good night. You can see why I use India and China as an example. It really is a big standout when it comes to population size. Then you want to look at the age distribution in the markets. Just because you have a large population doesn't mean your product is going to fit if you have an older population in the country and you're marketing a product that appeals to 20 to 30-year-olds in the process. So that is a big thing, just like you would any country, including the one that you're originating from, hopefully the United States. You look at the market. If your product doesn't fit that market, you may have to sell in a different part of the United States as you go through. So the size of the population, and then also, just like you would any other market, pay attention to the age, and then population density and distribution. If you go to sell in India, okay, you have the cities are highly densely populated and packed as you go through. You have the country in India, there's a lot of vacant land and a lot of rural communities out there, just as much as there is almost any other country as you go through. Different culture, but you have population density. So it depends, just like the United States. If you go to downtown LA, Okay, high population density, but you go to Northern California, you can sit down and have 30 or 40 people per square mile, even in some parts of California as you go through. So rural to urban shift, look as to how the population is shifting. Will your product and your service center fit that in the process as you go through? And then look at the overall social economic dimensions. The number of working women increases the labor supply, okay, and creates larger family income. But some cultures, that is not part of the culture. The divorce rates indicate formation of single parent families, which is a small economy all by itself. And then sometimes ethnic groups may require special considerations as you go through. There's a whole series of things to pay attention, which is why when you enter into a foreign market in the international business, that you need to sit down and know the population, know who they are, know all the different ins and outs of population density, age issue, and also the social economic environment you're entering. Government debt always has a consequence, with consumers typically paying at the end. Numerous dimensions as to the direct impact, population density distribution, and social economic dimensions, population demographics, growth and age, and then can the country absorb economic issues and shock and the impact of high debt? All these need to pay, they pay and also have a real impact on the decision to move and expand your market into that country. Take care.